Hey guys, Mr. T here for another episode of Mobile World, and today we are talking about probably one of my favorite time periods in world history, the Age of Enlightenment. Now, this era has also known as the Age of Reason, just simply the Enlightenment. The century that it took place in, the 1700s, is called the Century of Philosophy. Okay, so there's so many different names for this. So let's get into what it is. So the Age of Enlightenment was this time period where people started being enlightened. They started thinking more, okay? Before this time period, don't get me wrong, there were people who thought, okay, people did use their mind before this time period, although historically speaking that, you could say otherwise, but people did think before the 1700s, okay? However, the way it worked is, before this time, you pretty much had to think of how either the church or your king thought, or queen, okay? There really wasn't much free thought. You really weren't free to think of your own ideas, to come up with your own ways of thought, your own, your own way of looking at the world. You had to look at the world the way the church, okay, in some cases the Catholic Church up until the Reformation, and then your king or monarch or queen or whoever was in charge of your country, okay, your thought process and the way you thought and the way you believed had to be in line with them, otherwise there were some pretty severe consequences. Then we have this thing called the Scientific Revolution in the 15 and 1600s, okay? Massive amounts of free thought. People start challenging the world. They start asking what if or what. They start having new ways of looking at things. They challenge the old regimes, the old ways of thinking, and then philosophers, people outside of the realm of science, are like, hey, maybe we can piggyback off this and start changing and thinking about other things other than science. So we have some major movements during this time. People start coming up with ideas of freedom of speech, freedom of religion. People start coming up with ideas for new forms of capitalism. Okay, communism won't come until the late 1800s. Okay, Karl Marx, 1840s. Okay, whatever. So we start having all these new ideas and all these new trains of thoughts. And the reason that it's so one of my favorite time periods is the Age of Enlightenment almost directly influenced the United States Revolution, okay? Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, they're the two main ones, but many of our other founding fathers, they were very heavily influenced by the Age of Enlightenment, so much that the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution can trace almost 99% of what's in them to Enlightenment thinkers in the way they thought. Okay, these include John Locke, Rousseau, Voltaire, Adam Smith, okay, all these famous Enlightenment thinkers who came up with all these new radical ways of looking at the world and radical ways of thinking heavily influenced our founding fathers. So without them, there's a chance our revolution didn't happen or would have happened vastly differently than what it did. Okay? So ladies and gentlemen, that's the Age of Enlightenment. Let me know what other topics you would like to get to. And yeah, as always, stay beautiful, Americans, and peace.